Good morning, and welcome to Communicating with Incoming Leadership. My name is Patrick Shepard. I'm a senior instructor here at the Institute for Ethics in Government, and I'm really excited to join you today to talk about effective communications. And I hope today we'll share with you some tips and tricks that you find helpful in communicating with incoming leadership. And this is more important today than ever. We're in a period of transition between administrations. We're onboarding a new administration, a new set of leaders, which is always a difficult time for the ethics community. But we're undertaking this work with the added challenges of a global pandemic. So not only are we doing some of the most important, most time-sensitive work as ethics officials, we're also doing that work under the conditions of a global pandemic when some of our preferred tools are not available. For example, we don't have the staff meetings, we don't have the auditoria for all hands, we don't have the office visits. Many of our communications have been driven exclusively online, and that poses to us at this difficult time a huge challenge. So today I want to offer you some solutions. I want to give you some tools and techniques to create tight, succinct messages that create strong relationships with the audience and help the audience move towards the desired actions. Because when we're communicating, that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a relationship so that we can change behavior. So that's what we're really going to focus on today. So after we're done here, hopefully you have some tools that can make you confident in your ability to create messages that build strong relationships and change behavior. So I hope you'll stick with us as we work through today's presentation and use the tools that we make available in your own programs. So to start with, I want to think about the big picture. When we're talking about strategic communications, what is it that we're talking about? Well, I think there's a tendency to skip directly to methods. We say, is it going to be a video? Let's do an email. Let's do a newsletter, right? We get to the tactic really quickly. And I think that's kind of skipping over some important steps. I always think of the first step as being identifying your audience. Who is it that this message is for? And what does that audience need? What are they interested in? What do they value? What do they care about? Once we've thought about our audience, who they are and what they need, we can move on to say, who's going to do the talking? From whom should this message come? Sometimes that's an ethics official. Sometimes it's the designated agency ethics official. Sometimes it's the agency head. But other times it could be a supervisor, a colleague, or another leader in your organization. After we've thought about who our audience is and who ought to deliver the message, we get to sort of what's the content of the message. What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to communicate? What is the kind of relationship we're trying to build? And what kind of behavior do we want to change? And that's what we're really going to focus on today, is this idea of the message. We'll also give you some tips and tricks on methods. This is sort of the tactical stuff we usually talk about, the email reminders or the web meeting or the short video, and share with you some brief thoughts on frequency. So starting at the beginning, the audience we're going to be focusing on today are incoming officials. So this is your agency head, other PAS, and other appointees. So those are the audiences we're really going to be focusing on, because at this time after a presidential election, when we're onboarding a new administration, these officials are the most important people to inculcate to the values of public service, to introduce to the new obligations of their positions, and to get their cooperation in supporting an ethical culture. So where do we start with our messages now that we understand who our audience is? Well, a good place to start, because we're at the beginning of an administration, is at the beginning. So we can talk about things like the unique character of public service, and a feature of that being the oath of office. And it's unusual in employment, it doesn't happen in private sector employment, that you take an oath on your first day of work. And those two messages you'll see reflected in a number of documents that are already available and messages that are already being delivered to your senior officials. As ethics officials, your goal should be to work from the baseline provided by those messages down into the interests of your agency and its mission. So you can sort of follow on from those general categories of public service values to sort of more specific agency values and agency goals and objectives. and to think carefully about the value of the public's trust to your agency and its mission. I think we think of the public trust in sort of academic terms usually, not as a concrete thing we need to get our work done. But if you think about the services your agency provides, if the public doesn't trust those services, doesn't trust you to provide them, your ability to succeed becomes much hampered. So I would encourage you to think about exactly what the public trust means for your agency and its mission. The good news is you're not alone in developing and delivering these messages. So I've pulled a sentence from the first paragraph of the Biden administration's ethics pledge, Executive Order 13989. And this is an excellent starting point, and it's something that your incoming officials are going to already have seen or will very shortly see. And it says, I commit to decision-making on the merits and exclusively in the public interest. I think that's really important. That's an excellent jumping-off point to talk about the ethics program, because if you think about all of your work, everything you do as an ethics official on a given day, almost all of it is dedicated one way or another to ensuring that the government's work is done in the public's interest and exclusively in the public's interest. This message is also being supported from OGE. OGE's Director Rounds has continued his commitment to supporting leadership support of the ethics program by committing to send a memo, a personalized memo, to each incoming PAS official. And here are a couple of paragraphs from that memo. I'll give you just a second to read them. So there are three themes that I think you can take away here. One is that idea of building on the oath of office, and the oath of office as a ceremony that really introduces people into the community of public service. It also contains that language about supporting the public's interest above all, that our sole job here is to serve the American public. And also it opens the door to support for the ethics program. So it suggests that there are ways leaders can support you in your programs. So I'd encourage you to use this as an opportunity to talk to your incoming officials about the obligations of public service, but also ways that they can help support an ethical culture in your organization. I'd also like to draw your attention to a recent director's note, and if you haven't taken a look at this, it's on the homepage of OGE's website. I'm not going to read it all right now, but I did want to make you aware that it is available. So this is a director's note aimed at both the public and incoming officials that you can use maybe with those people who are not PAS officials, who will not be receiving a letter. But you can also borrow some of the messages and ideas from this. We're going to take a little closer look at it in a minute. So when we're talking about messages, there are some specific tools we can use to craft effective messages that build good, strong relationships and create action on the behalf of our audience. Many of you, if you've been practicing ethics or you've been to law school, are probably familiar with FLAC. This is a method for organizing legal writing. So we start with our facts, we talk about our laws, we conduct our analysis, and then we draw our conclusion. And this is an excellent way of organizing deductive legal advice. So there's a formal tool for doing that kind of writing. When we're talking about persuasion, when we're talking about strategic communications, there similarly are forms that can help us to do this. And one I'd like to share with you today was invented in the 1930s by a Purdue University professor, Alan H. Monroe, and it's called the Monroe Motivated Sequence. And it is to marketing and persuasive writing what FLAC is to the practice of law. It's kind of the foundation for persuasion. And it has 5 steps. And you're probably actually familiar with these steps, you just don't know it. So the first step is attention, getting people's attention. Then we talk about something the audience needs or a problem that they have. We offer to them a solution. We help them visualize a world when the problem has been solved. And we ask them to take steps in order to begin that process. So a place where you might have seen this, if you watch television and you don't fast forward through the commercials, you may occasionally catch a commercial for a pharmaceutical. And pharmaceutical commercials almost all use the Monroe motivated sequence consistently. So you can picture how this usually works. It's like, oh, hey, you over there. Do you sometimes have itchy, watery eyes? And you say, oh, yeah, you've got my attention here. Well, you might not know that itchy, watery eyes are a symptom of a terrible disease, that all sorts of horrible things can happen to you. Oh, no, that's a problem. You're creating a need within me. But don't worry, we sell tablets that can fix the disease so you don't have to worry about it. Then you're very relieved. And then say, think about it. Your eyes won't itch and you won't have this terrible disease, so you can go water skiing or play with your kids or, whatever wonderful thing happens in the commercial. And then they always close with the call to action, which is go talk to your doctor. So you can see this is used in advertising all the time, but we can also put it to work in our strategic communications. So I want to share with you some ethics-specific examples. That director's note that I showed you a little bit earlier does a pretty good job of using the motivated sequence. So we start with attention. Our nation faces serious challenges. Problem. We need to get new leaders on board quickly, make sure they're free of conflicts, and they're able to diligently serve the public that we serve. So that's our problem. So our solution is I'm continuing my support of ethical leadership. I'm sending a letter. Make sure that folks are fully committed to ethical service. Visualization, that we will protect our form of government, that we will see our form of government thrive. And call to action, the ethics community is ready to help you get the work going. So you can see we have sort of attention, problem, solution, visualization, and call to action. So let's take a look at how this works in kind of a generic concept. If we were just trying to write a welcome memo or maybe give a welcome presentation to a group of incoming officials, we might get their attention. We could do this by, in some way, communicating to them that public service is different. We might say, public service is different because you had to take an oath of office. We might say, you might not know, but we have special rules in public service. We might present them with a problem. Without the public's trust, we cannot succeed. And here you can kind of put in all of the bad stuff. So all of the negative things that happen when we have ethics problems can be included in the articulation of the problem. We want to avoid media scrutiny. We want to avoid negative media attention. We want to avoid negative attention from the Congress. We want to avoid harming mission work and being distracted from the important things that we are doing as an organization. Right? So that's your problem. You can move on to a solution. The solution is we have an ethics program. We have these steps that you can take. We have these services you can use to make sure those problems don't become manifest. So if you fill out your financial disclosure reports, if you come to training, if you communicate the importance of ethics to your staff, we can avoid that big problem. Can move on to visualization. So imagine, in a few years' time, you've finished your tour of duty as a public servant. You've accomplished lots of things. The agency's been able to be successful. Your policy priorities have been put in place, and you've avoided the scandals and distractions that sometimes can befall agencies. And then call to action, whatever you need them to do. So this might be asking them to complete their ethics agreement certification timely. It might be delivering a message to staff, attending training, seeking advice, inviting ethics officials into senior staff meetings, whatever it is you need them to do. So we can use this sequence to motivate people at the high level as they come into government. We can also use it for very tactical things, something like a training announcement. If we imagined we were encouraging staff members to attend a voluntary training presentation on the social media rules, well, we might get their attention by saying using social media improperly could have negative career consequences. Problem: failing to follow ethics rules on social media is dangerous for your career and for our organization. Okay, you have their attention. You've created a problem. You've shown them that they have a problem. And then you offer them a solution. Come to the ethics training for social media users. And then you can show them the benefit. Imagine a world where after training you can confidently use social media at work and in your personal capacity without fear. So we have a visualization. We're imagining the world free of this problem. And then we have our call to action, register now. So we can use this sequence in communications big and small when we're trying to persuade people to do something. And I hope you find it to be a useful tool. And I hope you put it to use in your programs, in fact. We've given you a worksheet down below. It's in the course materials that just has the 5 steps in a Word document, so you can refer to them easily. So that's a little bit about effective messages. I want to talk a little bit about methods and messengers now. Now we've figured out how to create really good persuasive communications. How are we going to deliver them? And we have some things we know are going to happen. We know that the ethics office is going to brief incoming leaders, sometimes one-on-one. So we can use our good message creation tools to make sure those are as effective as they can be. And we know that the ethics officials are going to deliver those briefings. We also might have memos, at the beginning of administrations when new leadership are coming in. Oftentimes they want to address the staff. They want to address the agency that they're leading. So there may be opportunities for memos from the agency head, maybe from the DAO, maybe from other leaders. And these are also places that you can put some of these persuasive tools to use. The virtual town hall has become a popular thing during the pandemic. So if we're going to be giving speeches, if your agency leadership are going to be giving speeches, it might be appropriate to have some public service themes in there, or to have that supplemented by a message from the DAO. We also have small communications, the reminders that we just send out in support of program activities throughout the year. Think about who the messengers are for these. Oftentimes we default to having the ethics office send them out, but sometimes supervisors or others can be more effective, because we do know that employees value the perspective of their supervisors above pretty much anyone else in the organization. And we can also use these in our trainings. You probably didn't notice, but at the beginning of this presentation, I started with a short motivated sequence to help you become interested in the content of this presentation. You could take that last example about social media and have that as the introduction to your social media training. So there are a lot of ways you can put this to work in all the communications that your agency does. A little bit about frequency, and we talk about this a lot. The timing of communications is oftentimes more important than the content. There's a lot of research to suggest that the timing of an ethics or compliance communication can have a greater effect even than the content of it, because it raises the salience at an appropriate time. So when you're thinking strategically about all of your communications, think about short messages and nudges frequently. And we always get all sorts of great examples of these when we have workshops. People doing newsletters or screensavers, or short emails or quizzes. But that's important to do. And then when you have those opportunities for longer messages, like annual ethics training or speeches from new leaders, you want to make sure that those messages are really effective and targeted to get the behavior change you're looking for. I just want to make you aware of some resources that the Institute for Ethics in Government has made available. We have a curriculum on education and communication in the Institute for Ethics in Government Learning Portal, and there are a ton of resources in here to help your agency's communications plan, and I'd encourage you to take full advantage of them. Some of the things that might be particularly useful right now are the handbooks for new employees. We have a handbook that's an introduction to public service that has a lot of that public service messaging. And we also have summaries of the standards of conduct, the criminal conflict of interest statutes, and the 14 principles. So not only do they meet the compliance standard, they're also very attractive, and they present this information in sort of a plain language that's kind of motivational. So those might be of interest to you. We also have an education and communication planning worksheet. And if you're not using this, I'd encourage you to take a look at it, and you can use this or something like it, but it helps you to get organized in your thinking about the communications that your agency ethics program does throughout the year. And we've tried to organize this to help you be as persuasive as possible. You'll note that we start with audiences. We go on to the problems and risks that those audiences face. We think about the compliance requirements, and then we allow you an opportunity to document the way you're going to communicate with them to address those problems. So using the motivated sequence and this document, you can very quickly put together persuasive, effective messages that actually change behavior. We also have a new document that you might find helpful, and this is a document that we created after a series of workshops with your colleagues. So we had ethics officials from all across the government join us in December for a series of workshops, and there's some really good tactical ideas that you can put to work. Some simple ideas that you're probably doing, which is, starting your communication during the nomination process. Some things that you really should think about if you're not, like conducting research to anticipate leadership priorities so that you can support the vision and goals of incoming leaders. Provide an ethics representative to attend regular senior staff meetings or include ethics items or messages on the meeting agenda. Cultivate ethics advocates in leadership at all levels of the agency. So, this is getting to know your chief of staff, getting to know your SES folks, your branch chiefs and supervisors. So there's some really good tactical ideas in this document that you can put to work very quickly, and they're developed from ideas that your colleagues have put into practice in their agencies where they've had success. So many of these are sort of battle tested. So I hope you review it and make good use of the document. OGE is also sort of ponying up our resources. We think this is really, really important. We think that creating ethical culture, that communicating effectively about ethics is foundational to the success of the program. So we're offering to consult one-on-one or two-to-one to agencies. So you can fill out the form in the description below to request a consultation with the Institute for Ethics in Government instructors. And we can help you to identify key audiences. We can help you with message development. We can help you identify appropriate messengers, to plan strategic communications, and think through the appropriate tactics. We ask that only DEOs or ADEOs sign up. We'd only like one sort of session per agency, but if you're not a DEO or ADEO and you think your agency could benefit, do get in touch with the DEO or ADEO at your agency so that you can sign up. We're happy to talk to more than one person at an agency. We just don't want to be talking to agencies multiple times. So that's the reason for the control. But we really are here putting our money where our mouth is and creating opportunities to work together to create better ethics communication. You'll also be helping the community because every time we have interactions with agencies, we learn something, and we can share that with the community through these broadcasts, through future consultations. So it's a real opportunity for our community to develop and grow. So some final thoughts. This work that we're doing is about persuasion, so we should use the tools of persuasion to do it. So we should think about when we're communicating what it is that we want to change in the way our employees or our leaders are behaving. We want to think about the problems we can help them with. We're also trying to create culture. So these are really difficult things, and we should use the tools that are appropriate. And hopefully today's presentation has given you one or two tools to do that. And finally, we're here to help. We do think this is important. We want to help you. We want you to succeed because really our success is your success is our success. Without your success, our work doesn't really matter. It's where the ethics program actually interacts and helps employees work more effectively, where our community success really lives. So I want to thank you for taking the time to think about these today, to sort of learn about these new ideas. I hope you will put some of these ideas into practice, that you'll maybe try using the sequence in a training announcement and a speech and a memo, whatever makes sense. And if you want OG's help, we're always here to assist, and we wish you the very best as we onboard new leadership.